Hello, my name is Harris Zeiler. This is my final submission for History 713, Entrepreneurship since 1900 for Professor Neese. The selection I have is the defense of my paper, which was on the destruction and death of the independent car companies in the post-war period. It was an interesting topic for me because I am attracted to transportation history and, well, as any red-blooded American man, I like cars. And so anyway, the many manufacturers who are unheard of today by many, including Packard, Studebaker, Nash, as well as others, were all alive and well at the close of World War II. Yet, by the mid-50s and into the 60s, these companies were all dead, completely bankrupt, out of business. What I found was that in order to stave off some of the, through my research, some of these companies tried to merge to try and make themselves have. It seemed like their biggest problem was creating that economy of scale whereby they would be able to compete with the big three, which is Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. Those are the big three, and what happened was they had so much production that they were able to make so many cars in 1 year that the tooling and the factories would need to replace all the dies and things in the machines, so that it was an expense that they were already incurring. Whereas if you're just Studebaker and you don't make nearly as many Fords as many cars as Ford, then you'll try and hold on to a design for a few years until they wear out. And so when they wore out finally, they were pretty dated, and people weren't buying them. Now, if this was like the interview I did with a friend of mine, Richard Price, who is the president of Ray Price Cars, he says Americans don't buy Ladas. They're same thing for 20 years. This isn't the Soviet Union, and we take cars as a necessity, not as a luxury item. And Americans will get what they want. They'll buy the things they want. And so what happens is, after a few years, the Studebakers and the Packards all look old and dated, and they want something new. And what happened was, every fall, there would be the brand new models of the brand new Chevys or the brand new Buicks or the brand new Fords, and Studebaker, Packard, Nash, and Hudson could not keep up. Excuse me. Now, every company kind of had their own, what I found through my research was every company kind of had their own take on how to make and produce cars. Packard, from the earliest days, was an engineering company. It was the finest cars that could be made. And what they did is they tried to make more cars. And what happened was, the more cars they sell, the more they make. It was a great idea. However, they diluted their brand. And the reason why people bought Packards was because they were the best. It was the standard of the world. And during World War II, they created the best engines. All the best fighters had Packard engines in them. And I'm talking about the P-51 Mustang, best fighter of World War II, Merlin engines, which was designed by Rolls-Royce, built by Packard. And after the war, they tried to make cars cheaper. People bought them because, like, wow, I could afford a Packard, so why not? And except they were becoming more and more like regular cars, and eventually they ran into the same problems as everybody else. They merged with Studebaker, who was more of a mainstream manufacturer, meaning they made much more cars. They made all kinds of things during World War II. And it was really sad because they did get into trouble with tooling and updating their factories, and the government contracts after the Korean War dried up, and so they couldn't make trucks for the army anymore, and eventually they just ran out of money, and they went bankrupt. There are elements of both Packard and Studebaker still alive today. These companies don't just disappear entirely like some of the articles we've read. They live on. Packard Electric is actually part of the General Motors Corporation. And so, they've become part of Delphi and other corporations. Studebaker, they keep trying to bring back. I don't know if it'll happen, but they keep trying. Now, as far as Nash and Hudson, they eventually bought Willis, which is the maker of the Jeep. And out of all of those, eventually they became American Motors, which Nash and Hudson had disappeared. Hudson was kind of a sportier kind of car. They, lower slung. They did things to make the engines get more power. Nash was always into efficiency, so they were well ahead of the curve on compact cars and even subcompact cars. Adorable by modern standards, seeing all that chrome on such a little car. But what happens is they were eventually run out of business by the big three. Now, as far as the historiography, there is a lot of material for Ford, General Motors, and even some Chrysler, especially if you're talking about Jeep. The independents, there was some good secondary sources, which was a critique of my paper, and I agree. I wish there were more primary sources. If people want to restore these cars, there's a lot of sources, but that really wasn't what I was looking for. There has to be more primary sources, and they are not digitized. So if I wanted to drive to Indiana, I could probably get into the archives and find out about Studebaker, or in Ohio, where Packard made their cards, but I couldn't do it during the COVID pandemic. And, I couldn't. So anyway, that was the defense of my paper. There needs to be more sources, and actually, I believe there's a good need for history in this manner. These corporations were huge. They employed a lot of Americans. They were part of American life. During the Depression, there were over 200. Before the Depression, there were over 200 auto manufacturers. We dropped down to under 50 after the Depression, and then after World War II, we got down to very few. There's the big three and very small ones. Even today, there's a handful, but a lot of them are starting to merge, which seems to be the nature of the automotive corporate world. The bigger companies that have the ability to make cars cheaper and monetize their massive amount of cost through many vehicles are able to survive, and the smaller ones just cannot compete unless you're very different, say like a Tesla. So thank you very much. Again, my name's Harry Zeiler. I really enjoyed taking entrepreneurial history. It's a little different than the normal history courses. I know I went a little over on the time, but I enjoy my topic. Thank you very much. Have a great day.